I will say James was a fantastic villain. We won't say anything, but he really kept you on the edge of your seat. There was this little bitty plot in there where he was trying to win Joanna's affections. He was trying to coerce one of his actress friends into doing the certain thing to manipulate Joanna. I loved it. His thread was just the perfect amount of, okay, what's going on? What's going to happen next?
Just to share a secret.
Welcome to the Bookish Introverts podcast. Join host Amazon bestselling author Brett Nelson and avid reader Melanie Dyer as they dive in to review books they've read, then chat with the amazing authors behind them. Quiet minds, big bookshelves. You don't want to miss it.
Hey everyone, it's Brett, and today is episode 5 of our Baker Publishing Summer Author Event. We've talked with some great authors so far about their upcoming releases, and today you are getting a lot of bang for your buck because we have not one but 2 authors on the podcast with us. For those of you who have read a lot of Christian fiction, you're probably going to recognize these 2 women. Tracie Peterson and Kimberly Woodhouse have worked together to create a series of books. Today, we're going to discuss the 3rd book in the series called An Unexpected Grace. And we're so grateful to them for taking the time to come on the podcast and talk to us. So Tracie and Kimberly, come on in and say hi to everyone.
Well, thanks for having us, Brett. I'm so glad to be here.
Thank you.
Yeah,
so
you're
glad
welcome.
to be here with you guys.
Absolutely. So before we start, I'm going to just do a little bit of a bio on each of you guys, just in case somebody's been hiding under a rock and they don't know who you guys are. Tracie has often been called the queen of historical Christian fiction. And I'm just saying, when people start giving you names like that, you know you have arrived somewhere in life.
There you go.
She is an ECPA, CBA, and USA Today best-selling author of more than 110 books. And that is so amazing. 150. Did you ever in your wildest dreams think you would ever crank out that many books?
I didn't. And it's up to 145. So
145. Wow.
I'm heading rapidly into 150 there. So
oh, wow. That is
happy.
So cool. Yeah. Now, it says most of those are historical. For the ones that aren't historical, what does that look like?
I have 3 different nonfiction books, and then the others are contemporary romance.
Oh, okay.
So they're all Christian.
All Christian. Oh, okay. All right. You've been given an award in 2013 for the Best Western Romance Author, USA Best Books 2020 or 2011 award for Best Religious Fiction for Embers of Love. What's Embers of Love?
That was a book in a series set in East Texas.
Oh, okay.
And Striking a Match series. So it was part of a 3-book series.
Oh, cool. Okay. You were given the Lifetime Achievement Award from the American Christian Fiction Writers in 2011 and the Career Achievement Award in 2007 from Romantic Times. So those are some pretty significant awards that you've been given. How exciting is that?
It was very exciting, and I'm, just so much fun to be a part of.
Yeah, for sure. I saw in your bio that you managed the Barber Publishing's Heart Song Presents book line, overseeing the production of 52 books a year. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yes.
Were you like an acquisitions editor, or?
We took over the entire thing. They sublet it to us, and we handled everything from acquisitions to typeset, and did basically 4 books a month, 2 historical, 2 contemporary, for their book club, Heart Song Presents. And I had written for it for many years prior and had kind of eased in with acquisitions and things like that. So they came to us and asked if we would take it over, and we did for several years. And it was just a really amazing thing for an author to do, because it gave me insight on both sides of the fence and made me much more appreciative of my editorial team.
Exactly. Sometimes we're a little bit one-sided on how the whole process works. So that's pretty cool to have that perspective from both sides of it. Yeah. So you're a Kansas native, and you make your home with your husband Jim in the mountains of Montana.
Yes.
So I've never been to Montana, but it sounds like an incredible place.
It is. It's gorgeous here, and very much has become home to us.
Has it? How long have you lived there?
I'm so sorry. We've been up here 24 years now.
Oh, okay. So you can pretty safely call Montana home.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so now we'll move on and talk about Kimberly for a little while. She's a devoted wife and mother and a third generation list student. And I'm going to show my ignorance here, Kimberly, because I was like, ooh, what's a list? I had to Google it, and I realized the list is a person, not a thing.
Yes.
You've passed down your love of music and arts to hundreds of students over the years. You've recorded 3 albums. That's pretty cool. What kind of music have you recorded?
Christian worship music, yes.
Oh, okay. All right. And you've appeared in over 200 or 2,000 venues to more than 1 million people. Again, that's really amazing. One thing I do want to talk about you is the Woodhouse family story has been on the front pages of newspapers and magazines, articles, medical journals, and you are featured on ABC's Extreme Makeover Home Edition. You've been on the Montel Williams Show and then the Health Channel's Mystery ER. Tell us what was going on in your life that you got to do all that.
Well, our daughter has an extremely rare nerve disorder. And when she was diagnosed, they didn't know of any other child in the world that was actually alive with it. So it wasn't until she was 7 that we found another family. And now there's about 35 to 45 confirmed cases of the same disorder, but they're all really different around the world. And so, but Kayla is now 28 and married and has 2 kids. And, it's just thriving and doing wonderfully. And so it's beautiful to see what God has done through his story. And this has all been, his story of what he's done in our lives. And I think people were so fascinated with it. And, they'd ask us to come to churches and share and, or talk to schools or whatever. And it was because even through all the trials, our whole theme was joy. So we just wanted to talk to people about grabbing onto God's joy through the tough times.
Yeah, and sometimes that's hard to be, even when you're a seasoned Christian. Sometimes grabbing onto that joy in the midst of something can be hard. And it gives you the opportunity to be an ambassador for something that other people may not have heard of.
Very true, yes.
You've been writing seriously for more than 20 years. You've written songs, plays, short stories, novels, picture books. It wasn't until a dear friend challenged you to do something with it, and that's when you pursued publication. Now you're a best-selling author of more than 24 books. You have won a Carroll Award, the Reader's Choice Award, the Holt Medallion, and you've finaled in the CELA Awards and the Spur Awards. I've never heard of the Spur Awards. Is that like, I'm guessing maybe a historical fiction awards?
It's Western Writers of America. That's a secular award. So that was pretty cool. And last year I had a book final for the Christies, which was fun. And Tracie had a book final for the Christies. And those are our big ones that we love to support. So I think book 45 is about to come out. I don't know.
Wow.
I'd have to have book somebody 40. Count them again because I think I'm off. But
after a while, it's hard to keep track of them all, isn't it?
It is, yeah. And as you were reading that, that's an old bio, and it's fun to hear that because the story, it was, until a friend challenged me to do something with it. And it was through that friend that I contacted my favorite author, who just happened to be Tracie Peterson. And wow. I asked her some questions, and she was so sweet and supported me, and she has mentored me for many years and is a dear friend.
And you contacted her before you started publishing, or just in the early stages? Okay. Wow. Yes. So were you afraid she'd be like, "Who are you? Why are you contacting me?"
I thought for sure she wasn't going to write me back because, she was the Tracie Peterson, Yes, she is the queen.
She is the queen.
Yes, she was my favorite author. And it was just so much fun to write her. And I thought this was going to get my other friend off my back, who actually had threatened to kill me if I didn't do something with my writing. And so I told her, it's like, well, I wrote an author, I did what I could, but then Tracie actually wrote me back, and it was very sweet and encouraging. And over the years, we just had more and more contact. It was a beautiful thing to see. So I tell people a lot of times that I wouldn't be published without Tracie.
Yeah. And Tracie, tell us a little bit
She
about that.
would.
When she reached out to you, what went through your mind? Like, do you get emails like that a lot? Like, what made you say, "Okay, I think I'm going to talk to this lady"?
I do get emails like that a lot, but I try to answer all of them. A lot of times people want me to read what they've written, or they'll want me to give them insight as to how to get started and so forth. And, I don't generally have the time to read what they've written, but I do
Mm-hmm.
try to connect them with things that will be helpful, like joining a local organization,
Okay.
teaming up with American Christian fiction writers, those kind of things. And a lot of times, I will answer their questions about, how do I find an agent, or what did you do first, or can you tell me what's the most important thing that I should be doing now, or whatever.
Yeah.
So I try to always answer, though.
So you kind
And
of push them towards some resources that they may not know are there
yes,
in order to get the
yes,
success they need.
exactly.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
with Kim, it was just, I have to say, it was a God thing, because I felt an instant connection with her, and we just started a friendship, you know, that has taken us, through 25 years or whatever.
Yeah.
It's been
yeah.
a while,
Oh,
but,
wow.
we were friends a lot, for a long time before we ever decided to write together.
Well, and I do kind of want to get into that. As an author myself, I cannot imagine how two authors can write one book. So tell me a little bit how that works. How do two authors write one book?
We plot. We are not seat of the pantsers.
Yes.
I think
Uh-huh.
Kim has more of that in her than I do. I've always written from an outline, and so we get together, or we will go back and forth through email, and we'll plot out a story. And a lot of times we'll just be talking, having conversation, and one of us will say, I really like to explore the area of such and such, and maybe set a book in this area at this time period. And the other person will be like, yeah, that sounds great. And we start talking about the things that maybe we can come up with, uh, or maybe we'll be reading about a historical event or something, and it'll just click. And uh, for Kim and I, we write enough alike that we can blend our styles.
Hmm.
And we both have a passion for the writing to be a ministry. So that's
Yes.
always been at the center. And I think for anybody to write together, you have to have several things in place. You have to have that trust element that goes between you. And you have
Yeah.
to have a common interest in why you write and what you want to accomplish with it.
Yeah, absolutely. Kimberly, can you give us like a day-to-day glimpse into what that looks like? Does one of you do like the lion's share of the writing, or is it like, well, I wrote yesterday, you wrote today? Kind of tell us how that the how that works.
Well, it's really a joint effort because we, like Tracie was saying, we either do it via email, or we're on the
Yeah,
phone, or we're in person. It's been fun to get together and just have time, just like a little retreat, just for us to sit and
yeah,
brainstorm and talk about it. And then we take all of these long ideas, and because I call Tracie the queen of synopses, which she is amazing. And getting back to seat of the pantsers and plotters, I have done both. And that's why Tracie said it. I have a little bit of the seat of the pantser in me, and I
uh-huh,
can do both. But I have learned from the queen, because Tracie is amazing. I have learned that the long synopsis is wonderful, and it saves your rear end. I don't know how many times, and
yeah,
how many times it has saved us. But she normally will take all of our long emails and all of our information, and I'll do a bunch of research and send her stuff, and she'll write a long synopsis, and then I'll start writing the first draft off of what she has in the long synopsis. And the long synopsis is scene by scene. And so, it has all of this beauty of Tracie already in there. And then so I write the book short, and then I'll send it to her,
Oh,
because
okay.
then she will go through the whole thing and blend in. And I
Mhm.
say it's adding Tracie's brilliance, which it is.
Yeah,
It's
she
Tracie.
does the Tracie magic.
Yes, the Tracie magic. And so she blends in. And so people have never been able to tell who has written what, but there's equal portions of both of us, in there. And because
Yeah.
we love each other so much, and because we both have our focus on Jesus, we just never really have any issues with anything. And so it's beautiful to, go back and forth. So when I'm writing, a lot of times I'll call her and say, well, what do you think about this? And she'll go, well, okay, yeah, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. Let's try that. And she'll be doing research, and I'll be doing research, and we'll come together and put our ideas in there. So there's just a lot of both of us in it, and our hearts are in it. And so then we go through the editing process and all the edits, all the fun part. I love edits. I will call myself the queen of edits, because I love the editing process, and that's
Do
my
you really?
favorite part. Oh, it's my
Oh,
favorite part.
And I do not.
Yeah.
you do not.
Yeah. So our
Well,
editor, Karen Ball, she always tells me, she goes, you are the queen of edits. And I'm like, well, thank you. That
wow.
makes me happy.
See, and
But
that's
it's a
what
lot of
gives you
fun.
guys such a good working relationship, because
Yes.
your strengths are diverse, but
Yes.
they gel together to create a great product. And
Yes.
that was one thing that struck me as I read the book, was how seamless the narrative was on the book.
Mhm.
Like you really cannot tell that it was written by two different authors, because I don't think I've ever read a book that was written by two separate authors. So I was kind of curious to see how that would look to me as a reader. So great
Well, and
job.
there are a variety of ways that different people write together.
Right.
And Kim even had an experience of writing with her daughter, where she wrote the adults and her daughter wrote the teens. And so
Oh,
it was a different style of writing together.
Mhm.
But I think the most important thing is communication, for sure. You have to be
yeah.
able to talk to each other, and you have to be willing to be honest with each other.
Mhm.
There's been
Yes.
times when Kim has just had to, come in and say, no, I don't think this will work. And there's been times when
Mhm.
I've said, I don't like this, the way this is headed, or whatever.
Right.
We have to be able to have that communication with each other and not worry about who's the queen of historical Christian
Yeah.
fiction, or who's the queen
Yeah.
of edits, or whatever, And so we feel very comfortable just to say, this doesn't work for me.
Okay, and that was actually was going to be one of my next questions. Are there ever times when you're like, this doesn't
Oh,
work
yeah.
for me? So it's kind of like, as an author, you really kind of have to learn to develop a thick skin, because
Mhm.
people have opinions,
Mhm.
and so
Absolutely.
so really, when it comes to this, you kind of have to develop that thick skin and working together, because again, you have to be comfortable enough to say, I don't really like this. Let's rework this. Let's work on this a little
Yes.
more. Yeah.
Well, and I think it's also a huge area of trust, because
Yes.
we've written so many books together now. I don't remember what we're up to. Is it like 12, or I don't know.
Yes, something like
I
It's
didn't
that.
realize
been
it was that many.
it's been 12 or 13 years, so it must be 12. I think we're up to 12. I don't know. Something like that. And after all these years, and just I think also the relationship that we have, we've built so much trust with one another that when the other person says something, we listen to what they
Mhm.
say, because there's so much respect there. It makes you go, okay, well, yeah, maybe we really should rework this, And
Yeah.
sometimes it's an idea that one of us came up with, or sometimes it's an idea that both of us, had agreed upon.
Right.
But when we realize it's on the page as the story's flowing, it's not, how it should be. And so this is just a beautiful relationship, because even writing books on my own, I always tell people that I think it's almost easier and more enjoyable writing with Tracie, because you have that other person in your corner, and you have that
Yes.
support, and you have that encouragement. And when you come to a roadblock, you're not just relying on your own, you're going to your partner in this and saying, hey, what do you think
Mhm.
about this? And I know that she's praying for me, and she knows that I'm praying for her. And that's a huge
Absolutely.
piece of it.
Now, when the first time you said, you know what, let's write a book together, let's try co-writing a book, was that an idea that you guys came up with just because you had grown into a friendship with each other, or did the publishing company say, hey, would you guys want to consider this? How'd that work?
Well, every time I've co-written with anybody, and there's been several times, it's always been something that has come about through a lot of prayer. And just for myself, I have a set of rules, and that is to know the other person's writing. So I'll read what they've written, any of the books that they have out, that kind of thing. And I will get my prayer team praying on it and, that kind of thing. But with Kim, it just fell into a natural order. As I watched her develop the stories that she was writing and the things that she was interested in, I felt like, it would be a good fit. And Kim can tell you how it came to her. It was kind of funny.
It is kind of funny. She had called because we had been praying about another publisher that was looking at a series of mine. And just out of the blue, Tracie, we're on the phone and I'm in my kitchen, on a bar stool. And she says, I just think we need to write together. And I literally just about fell off, the stool, because even with our friendship and how well we knew each other, this is not something that I would have ever dreamed of, much less, thought of asking her to do.
She answered my email. I'm sure not going to ask her to co-write a book with me.
Yeah. And I'm like, what? Just about. And my kids were young at that point. They're like, what's going on? Mom's falling off the stool.
She wasn't writing historical at that time.
Yes.
But we were talking about different things historically. And she was talking about some books that I had written and her interest in that area and so forth. And it just seemed like such a natural fit for her that I said, well, hey, have you thought about trying historical?
Yeah. Well, Bethany
But I have to say, she is super, super good, though,
Oh.
at the contemporary intrigues. So I want her to write both.
Yeah.
You're so cute. I think, and see, it's so long ago now, but I know part of the conversation was Bethany House had asked for some contemporary ideas from me and some historical ideas from me. And I remember asking Tracie, I was like, do you think I've got the chops, for historical? I love historical and I love reading it, but that's a different beast than what I'd written so far.
Yeah.
And she had said, oh yeah, you'd be good at it, and so I know that it had kind of grown out of that. It was so funny. It went from, just me pondering, coming up with ideas to Tracie saying, we're going to do this. And it reminds me of that old commercial, what was it? When E.F. Hutton speaks, everybody listens, or, whatever. So it's kind of like when Tracie Peterson speaks.
Well, and I'm just saying, when you're branching out into something new and you got Tracie Peterson as your sort of safety net, that's got to make the process a little bit easier.
Yes.
Yeah, I've got a couple of ideas. I'm new to historical fiction, to reading historical fiction. I've got a couple of ideas for one I want to write, but I just haven't quite branched off into that yet because I'm like, I don't know how to write historical fiction. Because it is so different, because you literally have to get into a time frame, a time period that you've never been there.
Yes.
And I always recommend go to the area that you want to write about, go to their museums, their archives, and read local diaries from the time period that you want. You get such a feel for the people and the place by reading diaries and journals. And, that has always helped me, even to the point of being able to pick up on attitudes in the town or, the church. You'll see that really there is nothing new under the sun. The people that were complaining about the color of the pews back in your church right now are the same ones that were complaining back in 1870. And there is nothing new under the sun. People are people. And the problems that we face today we have all this technology, but really, when it comes down to the very core basis of people, we're all still struggling with the very same problems.
Yeah.
Heartache, loss, trust issues, forgiveness issues. All of these things, have so profoundly affected people down through the ages that it's timeless.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And the research for getting into those time periods must be really fascinating too. I'm guessing since you love historical fiction so much, and that's mostly what you write, you must have a great interest in historical fiction or
I
in
do.
in history.
In
Yeah.
history, I've always loved historical fiction too, but for my off time reading, I love to read history. I love to read nonfiction about different events, watch documentaries. My husband and I just watch tons and tons of documentaries,
I love
and
documentaries.
just absorbing different tidbits of history throughout the ages and so forth. And one of my favorite lines ever in a book or a documentary is, well, we don't really know what happened here. And I think to myself, oh, I can come up with something.
Just ask me. I dare you.
Yeah, I dare you. Yeah. And, and a lot of times that has twisted off into a series or whatever. But
Oh,
where
yeah.
Kim loves the editorial process, my favorite by far and away is the research. I love research. And I'm married to a historian who also loves
there you
research.
go.
So
Yeah.
he, for the last 30 years or whatever has worked for me. And he just recently retired, but it's been a great time to be able, over the years to just go to different places and talk to people about their local history. People love to tell you about their history. And
Oh,
so,
yeah.
it's just a matter of getting out there and asking.
Yes.
Yeah.
And sometimes
yes.
sometimes I can't necessarily go and speak with them. So we do the internet thing or we do the phone. But, I've always encouraged people when they're doing research to go prepared. Have your questions, have the ideas that you need to understand better about the place, and, handle yourself very professionally and recognize that these people are giving you a valuable commodity in their time.
Now, Tracie, I want to go into the book after this question. Do you have a bucket list author of somebody that you would like to write with?
Oh, goodness, that's a new question for me. Not really. I've had so much fun with Kimberly. It's, that's been the focus. So right now, no, I can't say that I do. I just,
okay.
I try to be open to what the Lord wants. And if there's a place, when I got started with Bethany House, I was already a barber author for Heart Song Presents, and I loved what I was doing there. But I was brought into Bethany House through author Judith Pella, who had co-written with Michael Phillips, but was no longer doing that. And I went up to her at a conference and just totally, if you know me, it's totally unlike me. But I walked up to her and I asked her, I said, would you ever consider co-writing again? And that brought about our co-writing for 6 books. And so,
Wow.
God has just had his fingerprints all over me, my career and things that I have done as a writer.
And that's the recipe for success right there, when the Lord's fingerprints are all
Absolutely.
over it. When you're doing what you know he wants you to do, it's just, how can you go
Yes.
wrong with that?
Yes.
Yeah. So what about you, Kimberly? Do you have a bucket list other than Queen Tracie Peterson? Let's take her out of the equation because that's too easy.
Well, I love writing with her, so I don't think that's a fair question. I think
Oh, okay.
I think she's my dream person to write with because it has been so wonderful, and it was a huge joy and privilege to write with my daughter as well. And so those two,
Yes.
I think it would be really hard to top that.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. When you've hit strike gold right from the beginning, where else do you go
Yes.
from there?
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, let's get into this book, shall we? It's called An Unexpected Grace. It's a story of second chances and trusting the Lord with your life. The two characters, Parker and Joanna, they sort of meet. Joanna has this dream of marrying a pastor. Parker is a seminary student. Well, one day he comes up and kind of throws a wrench in their plans. They're about to get married, and one of you tell us what happened.
Well, Parker had a wonderful pastor friend that had talked to him about using his gifts in a different way than what he had always thought, but using his love of acting and drama and using that for the Lord. And it was really cool because in all the research that we had done, I had found this reverend who had actually started an actors guild within the church, right?
Oh, yeah.
Which I thought was the coolest thing. And I thought, this is great. We're going to totally use this, in the book. And so it was fun to add that in because nowadays it's very easy for us to see how the Lord can use us, right? And wherever we're at, that bloom where you're planted, right? Little phrase that we like to say. And Parker is very gifted in this area. And so when he tells her that he wants to pursue acting, that's quite a blow for her. And she doesn't really know what to do with that. And understanding they're both young and they truly love one another and they know each other well, but yet this throws off her plan. And being someone who is a planner, and I have literally a planner for my planners, and people tease me
Love
about
it.
that. My husband says I can organize the snot out of anything. And so, it's just one of those things. I understood her so well because wait a second, that's not part of the plan.
Yeah.
And so shifting
he
gears is
kind
hard.
and he kind of, how soon was it before the wedding that he kind of came up and said, "Hey, my plans have changed"? Like it was pretty soon before the wedding, wasn't it?
They were planning on getting married. So I
Yeah.
don't think we put in there like a time
Oh,
frame,
okay.
but back then, once you are devoted to someone, it's set in stone, right? You're already
Right.
I'm going to marry this guy, and then wait a second, he's going to do what?
Yeah. He switched lanes on me.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And one thing I really enjoyed about the book, first of all, just the theme of acting back in those days, because I think the book took place in late 1800s, I think. Is that right?
Early 1900s.
Early 1900s.
Yes.
Okay. And he's sort of the way he phrased it was, I really wanted to get into an acting troupe, a traveling acting troupe, because he felt like he could glorify God to a broader audience by going with this. And I kind of really chuckled at that a little bit because I thought that is such a wide departure from celebrities of today. There's not many Hollywood celebrities that glorify God in anything. So
Right.
Well, and it was really a departure for then too. I mean,
was it?
Actors in acting did not have a high reputation, and usually they were pretty well looked down on as, low life.
Really?
It was just, it was not considered something admirable at all to be an actor.
Oh, okay.
And, while people might enjoy the theater and enjoy the stories and so forth, it was rather scandalous at times. And people in the religious communities often forbade people going to the theater.
Oh.
So this was a real shift in time, and it was in this time period that we see this shift. And what Tracie's talking about, the scandalous kind of view of actors and people who did this for a living, right?
Yes.
Moving it to something non-scandalous, because morality plays began to start becoming more of a thing, and that also plays out in the story. And then it also is the time era of the Piccadilly, the little no, Nickelodeon, not Piccadilly, sorry, Nickelodeon little nickel theaters. And so this was a big change, and this was right when cinema is starting, right?
Yes.
So it's the beginning of so many different things and eras, and we wanted to kind of bring all of that to fruition and show how that is in people, and also the dynamics of what people thought of it at the time, and and how all of this portrayed these acting troupes,
Right.
at the time.
And as we put this series together, we wanted to focus on a historical place in Kalispell. And so like with the first book, I'm drawing a blank. What did we do on the first book?
Carnegie
Carnegie
Library.
Library, yes.
Yes.
And the second place was the depot, the train depot there in Kalispell. And then the third one, I'll let Kim tell you about because she was so excited about this opera house.
Well, and it's funny because when we first started talking about this series, we lived a mile and a half from each other in Montana, and that had always been our dream. Almost 30 years of friendship, we'd always talked about living near one another. So we lived close, and that was so much fun. And we both loved Kalispell, so we thought this would be fun. So in researching the historical, actually locations, we wanted places that were still there. And I found these articles about this very cool opera house that was still there, but it's no longer in use because of fire, and damage and all kinds of stuff. And it was going to be, millions of dollars for a renovation. And so it was fun tracking down the owner of the building and talking to them. And so it was really fun because then he got his dad involved, and his dad is this huge historian of the family. And he got all excited about, talking to us and giving us all kinds of information. And then they actually let us in, and getting to go into the historic opera house, even though it's, severely damaged and everything now, but to get to see. And in your imagination, you can see what it once was. And so I told Tracie, I was like, we have to do the opera house. And so I found this really cool article. Several different places had cited that, Uncle Tom's Cabin had come to the opera house. And, the lovely journalism of the day back then had talked about how it was so packed. There were people sitting in the windowsills and hanging from the chandeliers. And so I knew we had to use that.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, wow. If I can find a picture of it online, I'll flash a picture of that theater for the YouTube video for people to see. Tell me, I ran across something a little bit different in the book that I've never heard of. Joanna is a millinery. Is that how you pronounce it? Millinery. Yeah, I have a milliner. I had never heard that before. Tell us a little bit about that.
She's a hat maker.
Yes.
A fancy hat maker, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Well, and, a milliner in those days, I mean, women wore hats, men wore hats. And in her case, she is providing hats for women. And so everything from, small, casual, everyday wear to the big, fancy, floofy hats that, you would wear to the opera.
Yeah. Now, those hats that like the British women wear, what are those little ones called?
The little fascinators?
Yes. Fascinators, yeah. Are those the kind of the hats that she makes, or are they more?
No. This was the big hat era.
Yeah.
This was the era of the big hats. So like if you, a lot of people think of the movie Titanic, the very first scene with Kate, she gets out and it's this huge hat. So it's that era of the huge hats. And so I love it because there's little sections in here. We've had so many readers writing in, the early readers, who have gotten to read it early, that have been writing in and talking about that their favorite part was the hat wars.
Yeah.
It's just a little bitty thing in the book, but I thought that was fun that they loved the hat wars.
With the actress, I got a little chuckle out of that when she and the mayor's wife. It was the mayor's wife and the actress in the troupe. Yeah. Now, were hats sort of a status symbol back in that day, or was it just was it? Okay.
Absolutely. And a hat really told a story. You had these farm women who had their sunbonnets and hats for work. I mean, those were working bonnets because, it kept the sun from burning their faces, their necks, that kind of thing. And then you had women who were in job positions where hats were required. And you had then the society women who, again, the status of their hat, how big it was, how fancy it was, how many birds and feathers and fruit and whatnot was on it.
Yeah.
Showed exactly, more of their status. So hats were a real telling thing back in the day.
And you got some pretty cool, like little, descriptions of some of the hats. So you really could visualize what Joanna was making for them. And I thought that was a really fun aspect of the book.
Oh, good. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So this is the third book in the series. So unfortunately, I had not read the first two. So can you give us a little idea of how do you connect the three books? Like, or do any of the same characters from this one show up in previous books, or kind of what's that look like?
Well, our favorite character, I think, of all time. Well, I think she's my favorite character of all time.
She is
Marvella. And Marvella
loved her.
is
Yeah.
the judge's wife. And she and her husband are kind of the connecting force throughout these books, because
the series, yes.
they're technically standalones. They can be read out of order, but they do have the connecting of the timeline and the fact that there are some side characters that are in there. And so we've thrown out the idea, here and there, of writing Marvella and the judge's story, because so many of the readers have talked about how much they love Marvella.
Yeah.
So The Heart's Choice is the first book, and that is the one that is about the Carnegie Library. And then I just lost it. I can see With Each Tomorrow is book 2. And it really focuses on the railroad and what happened, because when the railroad was in a town and when the railroad came through a town, the town thrived. But when the railroad left, the towns normally died. So when the main depot is getting threatened to be pulled out of Kalispell, you wonder, what's going to happen. And the people in the town are really struggling with what is going to happen. And so that's kind of a big part of book 2 with Each Tomorrow, and the beginnings of Glacier National Park. And then now we have the Opera House, Macintosh Opera House, which is in the third book, An Unexpected Grace.
As soon as I read the third book, and I read it just fine without, having read the first two. So it totally is a standalone book. But as soon as I read it, I was like, oh my gosh. And I had to go buy the first one. I immediately went and bought the first one, because I just I've got to read this series. So
I love it. I love it.
Yeah, it was such a fantastic book. It honestly was. Is there anything else you guys want to say about the book before we start wrapping this up?
Writing for both of us, as we mentioned earlier, is a ministry, and it's always been that way. And for me, I want to share the gospel message in each of the books, as well as biblical application. And Kim and I have both seen over and over the proof that God uses the books in amazing ways. I can't even begin to tell you. But ultimately, we want the reader to have fun with it, and we want to hear from the readers. And even if the reader wants to write and tell us that they think we did something wrong, we don't care.
We'll take it.
We'll take it. We'll take it. But I just want to encourage the people who are listening to this to know that, our hearts are to share things that we've gone through and ways that the Lord has blessed us and helped us to project forward in Him and to bring Him glory. And that's really what this is all about.
Well, that's what we're all here for, to bring glory to the Lord. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I will say, James was a fantastic villain. We won't say anything, but he really kept you on the edge of your seat wondering. And he had there was this little bitty plot in there where he was trying to win Joanna back. He was trying to win Joanna's affections. And so he was trying to coerce one of his actress friends into doing this certain thing to manipulate Joanna. I loved it. His thread was just the perfect amount of, okay, what's going on? What's going to happen next?
Just to share a secret, Kim is the queen of villains. She writes the most amazing villains. And so I have to say, Jane, this is pure Kim and her genius.
Well, hats off to you, Kim, because I'm not one of these people that hates villains. Like, I can have a healthy appreciation for a good villain. Some people hate villains, but you did a great job on this guy, because it was fantastic.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah. And one more thing, I know you got to go. You also did a really good job of writing the little girl. Sometimes I cringe when I see kids portrayed
Right.
in
Yeah.
books because some people I'm like, okay, you need to go find a child and hang out with them before you try to write a
Yes.
book, before you
No
write a child
kidding.
again. Yeah. And she was just, even the little girl in the book, she was just so fantastically written. So all in all, this was just a fantastic book. You guys did a great job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are you guys kind of sad to see the series end? Do you kind of feel a sense of loss knowing that it's over?
Yes.
Always.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Especially, you know, I want to hang with Marvella. So
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
We do.
Yeah.
We want more of that.
Maybe
So,
we
and
can
I,
get a little prequel or something.
yes, we've actually
have-
talked about it. So we'll,
Yes.
Have you really?
yes,
Yes.
So maybe the story's not done quite yet.
maybe.
We'll have to
Hard
wait
to
and
tell.
see. Hard to
We
tell.
never say never.
Never say never. That's right. So Kimberly, I know we need to get off here so you can get on with your day. Tell listeners where they can find you online if they want to follow you.
My website is just my name, kimberleywoodhouse.com. And even if you spell it wrong with L-Y, it should get you there because I think I own all the domains. I think I still do.
Okay. Okay. All right.
I think even kimwoodhouse.com will get you there, but it also has all my social media and it has contact forms and
Okay.
book club, submissions if you want, us to come talk to your book club via Zoom or whatever, we can do that. So we love hearing from readers.
Which social media platform do you post to the most?
Facebook and Instagram probably equally.
Okay. Okay. Miss Tracie, how can people follow you if they want or keep up with you?
Absolutely. Just my name, traciepeterson.com. And then the same for me, Facebook with author Tracie Peterson or Tracie Peterson author.
All right. Well, everybody, if you're interested in these two, go check them out. If you want to follow us on Bookish Introverts podcast, we're on YouTube. We're on Facebook. We've got an Instagram. We've recently ventured into TikTok, which I absolutely loathe with a passion. But we do post a few clips on there. So we're all just out there just waiting to be discovered. Right, ladies?
There you go.
Absolutely. Well, thank you all for coming on. I appreciate it so much. And listeners, we thank you for listening. The next person that I'll be talking to next week is Shelley Shepherd Gray. So, so if you like her, you'll want to check in for that. Other than that, we'll talk to you guys next time. Bye-bye.
Thanks for joining us on the Bookish Introverts podcast, where together we explore the worlds within the pages. Until next time, stay bookish.